Welcome to Zen and the Art of Self-Publishing. It's the podcast where we slow down, get honest, and put the human back at the center of author life. I'm your host, Janet Margot, so come on in and let's talk. My guest today is Stephanie Chandler, founder and CEO of the Nonfiction Author Association. It's a community built specifically to help nonfiction authors navigate publishing and marketing in a way that actually works for their genre. She's also behind the Nonfiction Writers Conference, which is an annual event that's been running entirely online for over a decade. And she also founded Authority Publishing, which is a hybrid publishing house specifically for nonfiction authors. Please welcome Stephanie Chandler.
Hey,
Hello.
Janet, I'm so thrilled to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. So I just did the whole blurb, but can you give people the fast version of your background? Because I know you're a publisher, obviously a community builder, conference host, and you were or are a bookstore owner.
I was a bookstore owner. I quit my soul-sucking Silicon Valley job way back in 2002, opened a bookstore and thought I was going to write novels in the back office. True story. And a whole bunch of stuff happened. But number one was I realized I was a terrible fiction writer. And I also hated running a retail store. So it wasn't nearly as romantic as it sounds. And meanwhile, I had all these authors coming into the store wanting us to carry their books. We had a whole section dedicated to local authors and we did a bunch of events. But so many of the books were poorly produced. So I really thought I could help them with that. And so that started Authority Publishing in 2008. And then I was speaking at writers' conferences and nobody was talking to those of us who write nonfiction. I was like, where are my people? Why are all these sessions so fiction centric? And so in 2010, I did the first nonfiction writers conference entirely online. Back then we were doing it by teleseminar. Remember that? Where you dial into a conference line and listen? Yeah. Today, thankfully, we have Zoom. But yeah, and then after the conference each year, people would say, well, how do we keep in touch when this is over? And so the Nonfiction Authors Association was born 3 years later in 2013. And it's just been a super fun ride.
Cool. Now, let's back up. You did say you were a writer, you're a nonfiction writer. You were actually traditionally published, right, by Wiley? Is that right?
Yeah.
What made you move from traditional publishing to bring your books in-house to DIY it?
I had back-to-back 3 traditional book deals, and I grew increasingly frustrated with the whole process. It takes a year to come out. They change your book title. They give you a cover you don't like. The final straw for me was when the publisher called and said, we want you to remove a chapter. We don't care which one. We're trying to cut costs.
Oh my God.
What author wants to hear that?
Right.
So
especially we don't care which one.
We didn't even care which one. So I turned it into a bonus chapter, made it a free download, which by the way, I recommend doing that in every book ever. So I turned it into Lemonade, but I also said, I'm never letting that happen again. And I was already doing all the work. I had built an audience. I had subscribers to my email list. I had website traffic. And I thought, why am I doing this? And meanwhile, I have a publishing company. I'm producing other people's books. It just made no sense to keep giving up all the control.
Now, if you compare, I love that, by the way, the control thing is huge to me. I get a lot of clients that come to me from all over the place who are really, really interested in getting a trad deal. These are mostly nonfiction authors who are coming to me and have the illusion of the romance of a trad deal, so to speak. And I'm just like, control. I don't think people realize the level of control that they're giving up. But if you were to compare what worked in selling a nonfiction book 10 years ago to today, what's genuinely different? Not just faster or online, but is there anything else that's really different?
I think the authors that are successful are leveraging community. I think that's a big difference from 10 years ago. It's easier to access community. It's easier to build and create and grow community. And those are the ones I'm seeing having the most success.
What about the authors that chase the Amazon bestseller campaigns in like a micro category. What do you think actually signals a book's success now? And I heard you've never been a fan of that. Can you talk about that a bit?
I hate those bestseller campaigns. I think that they've eroded the term best-selling author. That used to mean you were a New
Yeah.
York Times best-selling author
Or USA
and
Today. Yeah.
or USA Today. And so I encourage authors instead to focus on staying at the top of a category long term, not be number one for 5 minutes on Amazon and call it a bestseller. It has no long-term impact on book sales. The
Right.
better plan is to focus on ongoing marketing strategies so you hover in the top of a category on an ongoing basis.
I support that. And what do you say though? I mean, is that all you say? Like what you just told me, is that all you say when someone is like, I want that bestseller tag? They come to you with like categories that they think they can dominate. Like, how do you talk them out of that? Or do you not talk them out of it, but you just give them your party line?
I don't talk them out of it. Look, I launch books myself. I want to be in the top at launch time, but I'm not turning around and calling myself a best-selling author. I've never used that term. But I do encourage them that this isn't going to have any long-term impact. So don't just focus on the launch, focus on the long term.
People are getting the information these days, but I do feel like they've really, a lot of nonfiction folks have really been brainwashed with that. And it's
Yeah.
just, it's a hard thing to undo. When I'm trying to help them with ads, it's really difficult if they're just hyper focused on those little categories, especially now with the way Amazon changes the categories. So you've worked.
And it's a game. It's a game that we're forced to play, and it just means nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. You've worked with thousands of nonfiction authors. What's the challenge that never seems to go away, no matter how much the industry changes?
Marketing, time for marketing, I would say. So many authors complain to me, I don't have time for this. And I say, New York Times bestselling authors have day jobs. We all have to make the time if this is what we want to do. So that is
That's
the
a data
biggest complaint.
point. That's a data point that I don't think enough people realize. And I personally know more indie authors who aren't on the New York Times bestseller list who are truly full-time authors, as opposed to the people I know personally who have hit those New York Times bestselling lists. And the people that I know personally who have hit those are mostly fiction authors. But they have to write for magazines, they have to do teaching gigs, they are hustling with all kinds of other gigs that rely on the New York Times bestseller list prestige, but that's not keeping food on the table.
No.
No.
So
if we're looking at the marketing side, is it strictly a time gap, or do you think like what breaks it down? Is it a skills gap, fear gap, fear of the unknown kind of stuff? Like, what do you think?
I think a lot of it is overwhelm. I think there's so much conflicting advice online that authors, when they join our community, they're like, I'm so confused. I don't know what to do next. And I heard I should do it this way from this site. And I heard it on Reddit that I should do it this way. And so it's almost like analysis paralysis because I don't know what steps to take next and how to prioritize them.
And do you think that that's in part because so much of the information they're getting out there that is overwhelming them may not be specifically designed for nonfiction authors? Like, does that advice transfer?
Absolutely. I think marketing fiction and nonfiction is very different. And it's actually harder to market fiction, in my opinion. I think nonfiction, we have some great advantages there. So, yeah,
Like
but I
what?
think Well, because nonfiction authors can focus on their expertise, right?
Hmm.
And they own their topic. In fact, fiction writers really could take a cue from this, because nonfiction authors, when we're building platforms, we're talking about our expertise and we're serving the challenges that our audience has. Where fiction, like you just said, it's storytelling, it's teaching, it's talking about writing, and I'd love to see more fiction authors take a similar approach. So I'll give you an example. I was up in Lake Tahoe recently, and there was a book display from a local fiction writer. I think it's Mysteries, and I wish I could remember his name, but he had a series of stories set in Lake Tahoe. Well, if I were him, I'd become the Lake Tahoe Sherpa online. I'd be posting about things to do in Lake Tahoe, events to attend in Lake Tahoe, literature in Lake Tahoe, and become the Lake Tahoe expert, because that is part of the charm of his book. People vacation to that town. I mean, they want to take a piece of it home with them. I bet his book display at the breakfast joint does really well. So I think fiction writers could take a cue from the way nonfiction writers have to approach our marketing. And for us, it in some ways it's easier, although we're still having to do the work to create that platform and demonstrate that expertise and reach our audiences.
I think there's another piece to it too, like coming into my specialty on Amazon for a minute. Um, in terms of, I think you're absolutely right about authority and, really driving that home. And that is definitely a missed opportunity for fiction writers. But in terms of actual discoverability, so you're talking about the stuff like after they've been discovered, but for discoverability, on Amazon, it's so much easier to, if you think of search and browse, it's so much easier to search a very specific time and get, or excuse me, a very specific theme and get the right response, as opposed to all the nuances of, let's say, paranormal women's fiction and trying to get some kind of emotion that's a differentiator, or a mood or a setting that's a differentiator. It's much easier to say, I'm looking for help on X topic, or, you know, I have this problem, or I'm looking for this solution, whether like, you know, for some reason I'm thinking of alcoholism right now, overcoming alcoholism, or marital woes, or whatever. It's so much easier to put that in and to get the right response back and to get found. The
It
keywords
is.
are
That's
just boom, boom, boom.
another big advantage of nonfiction. And I will say memoir writers miss that opportunity as well, because I'm a huge memoir reader, and I'll search memoir about, I don't know, you just said alcoholism, or memoir
Yeah.
about mental health. So many authors miss that opportunity to put those search phrases into the optimization of their book pages, right? And so
Wow.
yes, I see this constantly. So that is such a simple way to help a memoir get found, is focus on what the theme is, because people are searching for the theme of the memoir. People like to read memoir that is relatable in some way. And yeah, so you're right. I think there's so many ways that make it easier for nonfiction over fiction. Fiction is a tough road.
So is there anything though that you think from fiction that actually, because I'm focusing on that, because there is so much indie author advice out there that they may not even say is for fiction. It's like agnostic, generic advice out there. Is there anything that really is for fiction that does work for nonfiction?
I mean, certainly sharing stories, although fan fiction and sharing nonfiction doesn't translate the same
Yeah.
way. Um, with fiction, I think that fiction should also leverage the themes that are in the books. There's a great example of an author I've worked with for a number of years now, Mark Paul, and I think I've shared this with you offline. He wrote a memoir about betting on a filly to win the Kentucky Derby, a long shot bet. This was back in the 80s. It's a memoir. It's called The Greatest Gambling Story Ever Told. He has now sold over 75,000 copies using nothing but Amazon ads. I mean,
Awesome.
that's that's phenomenal. And we don't hear these stories every day.
No.
But part of what because memoir and fiction are kind of close, right? It's about a story. And for Mark, finding categories was key. So his categories are equestrian books, sports, gambling, I believe. And so he's figured out where his target audience and is searching. And with Amazon ads, he's able to hover in the top of his 3 categories for each edition of the book. And it's just been like a snowball.
That's amazing. Now, you mentioned a minute ago that nonfiction authors are selling authority and they really have to lean into that. So how should that change the way someone builds an audience before the book even exists?
Oh gosh, please start before the book exists. So many authors don't do this. I mean, I think back to my own example when I was starting out in the early 2000s and I pitched my first book. It was a business startup guide. I pitched it at the San Francisco Writers Conference, and agent after agent was like, nobody knows who you are. And then literary agent Mike Larson called me, took the time to call me and said, I like what you're doing, but you need to go build an audience if you want to get a book deal. And he said, you need to reach thousands of people every year. And I had just left Silicon Valley and I was like, he's telling me to go out speaking. I don't want to be on the road. So I started a website. I started blogging before blogging was a thing. I had to create a new page every time I wanted to post an article. But what I found was every time I wrote a new article, I got more traffic. And then I created an email sign up. And then we didn't have social media, right? So literally it was just content. And so what happened was I ended up self-publishing that first book. But when I listed it for sale, it started selling immediately. And I realized it was because I had been doing the work. I was building the audience. And that's how I ended up with my next book landing a deal with Wiley, because I was able to say, look, I have traffic, I have subscribers. My self-published book is selling well, and I got a deal right away. So do the work before the book comes out.
Do you have fiction authors that come to you ready to write nonfiction? Is
Very
that a use
rarely.
case at all? Rarely.
Very rarely.
Do you think because they're not doing it, or because they just think they know the ropes now?
Maybe both. I mean, I see a lot of fiction writers are passionate about their, their craft.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of our nonfiction writers, a lot of them are professionals. They have other reasons for publishing. They want to share their life experience. They want to get new clients for their business. So the motivations are very different as well. So we don't see a ton of crossover.
Yeah, I always think about on the nonfiction side how there's just such a spectrum of writers. Like that on the fiction side, most of them are, leaning, the ones on independent anyway, that are independent are leaning towards, commercial and trying to make money off it. And then there's the whole spectrum over here that's usually nonfiction writers who, some of them just want to get their message out and don't care how many books sell. They're willing to give their book for free. And then others, it's like passion project, life story for the family, or like a lead for clients, whatever. But there are so many different use cases. I actually think that's one of the most interesting things that happens when I get clients from your organization. It's like, it's always like a little juicy, everybody has a different story, a different why behind their book. Yeah. It's super cool. And I do like that they are, more educated on like best practices and the right way to do things. They're not all like flighty, like I had an idea and I put it into AI, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But what about, so I meet your authors after they've been in your community for a while, but when someone is relatively new to your community, are they looking for advice on how to publish like traditional, hybrid, and DIY? Like, do you get a lot of those folks come in?
That's one of our most popular topics is how do you choose your publishing path? Yeah.
So how do you navigate them? Is there like a dividing line? Like if then go this direction, like what's that look like?
I actually created a chart because just even leveraging my own background with this, when
Yeah.
I self-published that first book, I remember sitting up reading, back then it was Dan Pointer's self-publishing guide. It was like 300
Mm.
pages. I was completely overwhelmed, and I am not a DIY person. Some people
Oh,
love DIY. And I don't like managing details. This is why I've had assistant forever. I don't like
right.
details. If you love details and you're inclined to take all those steps, then self-publishing is a great option. But if you're someone like me who just, that sounded so painful, and you have a budget, traditional, or excuse me, hybrid publishing is a great choice. But you do need to have a budget, and you want to not have to deal with those details. And if you have a life mission to get a traditional book deal, and I can relate to that because I had that mission as well, and I don't regret having done it, then I say set a timeline, right? 6 to 12 months. If you don't have a deal in 6 to 12 months, then go to plan B and self or hybrid publish, because I see too many authors spend years trying to get a book deal, and life happens. What if you die? What if your book never sees the light of day? I just hate seeing people waste time like that.
I've been working with an elderly client. He's in his 90s. He is, so when I say elderly, I mean elderly. He is literally my favorite client. Like, he's had an amazing life, and he's a really interesting and cool person. But he was shopping for a traditional deal for a while. And it's just like, I don't think that's wise in this, where you are in life right now. It's just a lot of time and a lot of energy,
That's
big
right.
investment for that. But do you feel like that's shifted, or are most of the people who come to you still hoping to land that trad deal?
It's shifted a lot.
Okay, good.
We certainly have authors who still want to do that, but I would say the vast majority are now coming in just knowing they're going to self-publish.
Okay, so then it to them, is it black and white, self-published versus trad, or are people are people open to hybrid? Like, where does hybrid come into that mix?
Hybrid fits really well in our community with nonfiction authors because so many of them are professionals, right? And they're too busy to manage the details. They have some, budget set aside for their projects. So it's interesting. As you said, you've met some of our community members, but
Yeah,
I mean, we have college professors,
yeah.
therapists, physicians, attorneys, consultants, and then a lot of people come into our community as retirees, right? I finally have
Mm-hmm.
time to write the book. And many of them had professional careers. I mean, if you're called to write nonfiction, you have something to say.
Yeah.
And so, hybrid is a good fit in our community in particular, because a lot of us, myself included, don't want to DIY things. We just want it done well, and we're willing to pay for that.
Are you getting are you seeing more with the advent of AI? And I know we're going to go into AI in a little bit, but with the advent of AI, are you seeing more nonfiction authors come in who, like you said, you were talking about the retirees, and you said more of them have something to say or have some kind of authority or expertise that they want to share. But are you seeing a strong contingent coming through your doors of those who are in the get rich quick kind of mode? Or they don't, or do you filter them through your marketing and community messaging?
I don't think we have a ton of those. No.
Okay, good. They're not the ones that I see, but I didn't know if you're like filtering in them in some way, or
I think I filtered them just because of who I am and how we present our content. It's,
yeah,
integrity is one of my core values. And so
yeah.
I hopefully that comes through in everything we do. And those people are not looking for the integrity way.
It comes through in your clientele. That I can definitely say.
Thank
Um,
you.
but and I see some nonfiction authors come through other spaces, and integrity is not top of mind there. Let's talk about Authority Publishing, because that's your startup. Well, it's not a startup anymore. It's been around a lot longer than I thought.
18
Um,
years. Yeah.
that's insane. That's a hybrid model. Um, who's a good fit for that? I mean, you said professionals, but and how do you differentiate from other hybrid publishers, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we do vet. So we vet manuscripts, and that is one of the
Okay.
key things about that
Yeah.
distinguishes a hybrid press. We turn manuscripts away. I don't do any marketing of Authority Publishing. It's almost exclusively word of mouth. You don't even see us really mentioning it within the association. So most of our clients are coming to us by referral. And so it's just really important to me. I had someone say to me not that long ago, he said, I can't find anything negative about you online. I don't believe you guys are real. And I said, well,
That's
worked really hard
hilarious.
to make sure nobody's has anything negative to say about us, right? That's our job. So differentiating us, we assign a direct project manager with the clients. That's a big one. A lot of these people are like sick of talking to call centers or waiting on email
Yeah.
responses. So they get a direct project manager who oversees the whole process. By the way, my main project manager has been with me 15 years.
Oh my
My book
God.
designer has been with me 15 years. We're all based in the US. That is a huge flag that I'm seeing with a lot of other presses out there. I'm hearing horror stories like they're outsourcing editing to other countries. This is a huge concern. Editing, the editor, English should be their first language, just
Yeah.
to be clear. And also when your manuscript gets shared outside of the US, you have just lost all control over your copyright protection. A lot of authors don't realize that this is happening. So when they're vetting these service providers, make sure and find out where are your contractors located, because so that's really important to me. So we do everything with integrity. We're really efficient, generally 60 to 90 days from the time we receive a manuscript to the time there's a book in hand. I am not an editor, but I love, love, love editors. So I'm really picky about our editors. We have 3 really fabulous, talented editors. So a lot of
Great.
attention to detail. My goal has always been that these books look like they came out of a big New York publishing house.
Yeah. Let's pivot a bit to one of the services that you offer outside of Authority Publishing and outside of the general community. You have Pitch Day. Tell us about that. Pitch the agents.
Yes. Sorry, my mute got stuck. So yeah, so at the conference, at the Nonfiction Writers Conference every May, we have a 2-hour session. It's a live on Zoom to pitch the agents each. So we do it by kind of a lottery system. So the conference attendees can put in an application to pitch, and then we draw, I think we're doing 16 or 18 people, and each person gets 5 minutes to share their pitch and get feedback from the agents. I always say try to do the least amount of talking because you want them to be asking
Yeah.
questions. And it's been really successful. It's a very popular session, not only with attendees, but the agents love it. We get book deals out of that event every single year. And the agents love coming because nonfiction writers, right? We have such an interesting community. And even for those not pitching, I consistently hear year after year, gosh, that was so fascinating. So many interesting projects. That book needs to be in the world. So we're all really inspired by the pitch sessions, and it's a huge highlight every year.
Did have a client, somebody from your community, come to me who was raving about the feedback that he got on Pitch Day.
I love that. And not everyone gets great feedback, right? Like they're honest, and that can be difficult
Yeah,
to receive.
it wasn't all like perfect feedback, but it was really meaningful feedback,
Good.
as feedback should be. It shouldn't be all like blowing smoke, you know.
Yeah,
It
and we're
should
selective
be.
about the agents that participate, and I
Mhm.
I choose agents who are kind,
Mhm.
and actively, creating book deals, and
Yeah.
literally have agents coming to me wanting to get on this panel because they know we get great pitches.
So let's talk about the membership that you offer. What does membership give you that an author, a nonfiction author, could not get just by reading free content online?
What happens so often is people come into our community and they're like completely confused and overwhelmed because, as I
Yeah,
said earlier, there's so much conflicting advice out there.
yeah,
So, one thing I believe we're delivering is clarity. We're helping authors carve out the path. We do 36 Zoom community calls a month. I mean, excuse me, a year, not a month,
Oh my God.
a year.
I was like, what else
I
do you
would
have
never
time
sleep.
for?
But, so people can come with their questions. We work in small groups. Most recently, we launched these genre groups. So we're putting people in Zoom breakout rooms based on if you write memoir or self development or wellness. And that's been wildly popular because now they can connect with each other and they can be each other's beta readers. They can swap books and write reviews for each other. They can support each other's launches. So we're seeing these great collaborations happening. I'm really proud of the community aspect of what we're bringing. And then the education, right? I tell them all the time, ask us if you're concerned about a service provider you're about to hire, if you're not sure if you should do A or B, ask in the community. We will give you the honest answer. So hopefully, I think we're helping people avoid a lot of mistakes, especially
Yeah,
costly mistakes,
yeah.
and guiding them with proven advice that is grounded in integrity.
You just said something about costly advice. And I think one of the biggest differentiators when I'm working with nonfiction authors versus fiction authors is that fiction authors now they understand the rules of the game, which is basically to have a true economic engine, you need to be writing series. But many times these nonfiction authors are just writing a single book, which means that it's going to be a different path to earn out the investment in the book. Like in ads, it's definitely like you can't bid as high. We talked about how it's a little less competitive on the nonfiction front for some nonfiction ads and keywords, but still you can't bid as much. You just because you have your lifetime value of a reader is a little bit different. So that's just an interesting thing that I think they have to really take into consideration and really be looking towards publishing advice that really is conformed to the nonfiction space because the economics are really different. Unless you have that authority and you're going to do this book is a lead generator to my consulting practice or course, right?
Nobody wants to waste money, and
No.
even the professionals who have budgets to spend, you don't want to waste your money. And I see so many mistakes happening or investing in services that are never going to get the return on the investment. And so and then I hear these horror stories on the back end of authors hiring, particularly in the vanity publishing space. So many awful stories. And I wish they come to us first and say, is this a good choice? Because I will happily tell them the truth.
I think though, for it's been my experience, and I mean, I've worked with a lot, but not the thousands that you have in the nonfiction space. They really cringe when they hear that word vanity. Nobody wants to believe that they have engaged with a vanity press. I mean, it is such a derogatory, it's like a slur against their project almost. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And their decision making. And I think that's like a really tough pill for them to swallow. It's
Yeah.
like,
I mean, and some of them are like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? So one of the
well,
things we
I'm thinking of one right now that feels like that to me from what I've heard. And they have a very solid reputation in self-help and self-development space. But when they're working
I
with,
know exactly who you're talking about.
yeah, when they're working with newer authors, I'll just say debut, more naive, new nonfiction authors, they lean on that, but the people just don't understand that this is this arm of this legit company is strictly a vanity press.
And it's a white labeled vanity press. They're not even
What does that
producing their
mean?
own. They're white labeled with, I'll tell you who they're white labeled with, Author Solutions. So Author Solutions provides the services for that press that you're talking about and others. And Author Solutions has a history of being embroiled in lawsuits and
Right.
all kinds of problems. So the late great CEO of that company you're talking about would be so horrified to know the route that they have
Yeah.
taken that division.
But wait, I'm sorry. I don't understand what you mean by they're white labeled with by or with Author Solutions.
Author Solutions provides all the services. It's not the forward
Oh,
facing
oh,
company.
okay. All right. I'm thick-headed. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I did not know that. But now that makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. So, going back to your organization for a minute, you also have the Nonfiction Book Awards. And I see that you're open to both self published and traditionally published authors. Why did you make that decision rather than separating the categories, or are they separate? How does that work and why?
We don't separate the categories, and that's
Mm-hmm.
intentional because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to add to the stigma of self
Got
publishing.
it.
I am pro self publishing, and I think self published and hybrid published books can stand up right next to traditionally published books. And I think we should wear that proudly.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about AI. I've read it up a couple times. Because I see a lot of AI authors come my way. And when I say AI authors now and AI nonfiction authors, I'm not talking about people who use some kind of AI automation co-work or AI assisted. What I mean is really like the get rich quick mentality of I have an idea, plug it in some AI tool, get a book. I find I made the mistake a while back of working with one of them and not realizing that this person was, I don't even want to say leaning into AI because I think they were just having
All
AI
in.
do it all for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me a while. And then she forwarded something to me that had the AI notes in it. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. 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 So, and I stopped working with her at that point. I canceled the contract actually. Not just because of that, but it represented her whole mentality of you don't really do any work. You just put something in, press a button and get output. It's like, no. So you've talked though about, you're not totally anti AI. You've talked about approaching AI from a place of opportunity rather than fear. What does that look like in terms of how you advise authors on the day to day? And are they asking a lot about AI? Do they have AI concerns? What do you
All of
think?
the above.
Okay.
Okay, so I love and have embraced AI in my daily life, in my daily business operations, all of it. I do not like it for writing books. I think
Yeah.
it is wonderful for editing. I think it's wonderful for idea generation, giving you feedback, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is disappointing to see people using it to write books or to just churn them out like your client did. I just bought
Mm-hmm.
a book on Amazon ads that came to me. It was a thick, giant book, literally page one. It was so clearly written with AI. It wasn't even funny. It was horrible. So, people are going to probably notice, especially if you short circuit it. But for authors in particular, I'm seeing both. I see a lot of fear around it. And I think there was a recent survey about 70% of Americans don't trust AI. And I can appreciate that as well. But I also see the benefits of it. It can help you brainstorm the outline for your book. It can give you article ideas. I just uploaded all the transcripts from all the webinars I've ever done, and I'm having it extract the human stories from it, because I
Mhm.
forget I've been doing this for almost 20
Yeah.
years, right? So give me an archive of the stories I can share. Help me come up with ideas, asking it for data on your industry. So there's a million wonderful ways to leverage AI as an author without it writing our book.
And do you have any, when you're working with somebody in any capacity, well, not in any capacity, because I guess I don't mean membership, do you have them sign like any kind of AI vetting documentation?
We haven't gone there yet. It's been a discussion.
Hmm.
I speak to every author that comes through with us, and I ask, and I run it through an AI checker before we proceed. So
You have faith in those AI
I
checkers?
don't have 100% faith. So to be
Okay.
fair, but if it tells me 70% is written by AI, that's a problem, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that's what I'm looking for.
Hmm.
And I've also had authors who were like, "Look, I wrote the book, but AI helped me make it better." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's run it through the checker, make sure it's not
Yeah.
flagged that way." And if you're going to use AI for any part of production of your book, please hire human editors,
Yeah.
right? And have them help make sure it doesn't look like it was written with AI. So it's tricky right now and it's evolving, and I don't know yet how our policies are going to land, but I will turn away a manuscript that's 70% or more AI, 50% or more, honestly, at this point.
Good.
Unless they're willing to take it through fully human editing, like real editing.
What do you think a human editor catches that the AI editor doesn't?
Good editors are
Yeah.
looking, right? They're looking for those common, like the M dashes, which it makes me so sad that I can't
I
use M
know.
dashes anymore,
I
right?
know.
I love them and I'm removing them. And it really, thanks AI for stealing our M dashes. But there's, telltale words and phrases
Yeah.
and things like that. So, I think when I open that Amazon, or not Amazon, Amazon
Yeah. The Amazon
Facebook
ads book.
ads book I bought.
Facebook ads book. Okay.
It was a Facebook ads book. It was so clearly written by AI. You could almost just see it answering the prompt. And so editors know how to catch that stuff.
Yeah. And you've also started warning your community about AI scammers that target authors. What are you seeing?
This is a huge issue. So we're seeing a lot of impersonation. So Cheryl Strayed reaches out and says, "Hey Judy, I really loved your book on yoga, and I'd love to mentor you." And and so I wrote a post about this because they keep getting forwarded to me, and I'm seeing, and then there's like pitches. It'll say, "Oh, I read your book about scientific studies of rock formations, and I would love to feature your book at our next event. It'll be $2,000 to sign up to be part of the event." But then they're like, "But they read my book and they really liked it and they were flattering." So they're using
Oh
AI
my
to
God.
scrape all this data. So I wrote a post about it. I was just really upset, and I was hearing from so many authors. The week after I wrote that post, I got an email forwarded. It was somebody impersonating me saying,
Oh my
"We'd love to
God.
feature your Susie, your book about this was so great. I'd love to feature it at our nonfiction writers conference." And we don't do that. So we're seeing a ton of this, and it's
I don't
really disturbing.
I don't get a lot of impersonators per se, but I know that since AI has just become so commonplace, um, in terms of the ability to data scrape, I can't believe, like if I don't check my email over a weekend or my spam over a weekend, I will have 20 to 40 email messages in there looking to fund my company, to
Oh
buy
yeah.
my company, um, or for how about you create a book based on your expertise? That's a great one since I already have a book.
Right. I love those.
Like all those things. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, there's some great telltales though, because they usually refer to me by my last name, which is a common first name. But hey, Marco,
Yes,
like
delete.
it's just funny. But so nonfiction publishing continues to evolve. Where do you think things are going to be in 5 years? Do you have any cool predictions or not so cool predictions?
I mean, it's only getting more crowded, right? And
Yeah.
so I think if you're gonna wanna if you want to stand out in the nonfiction space, we have to be more visible online as humans, right? Look, I'm a longtime blogger. I love blogging. It's still my one of
Hmm.
my favorite things I do, but I think we need to be visible. I think we need to be cultivating community. And self-development's getting hit really hard. I just read a stat this morning about and I wish I could recall the stat, but it was the number of people turning to AI for therapy and for guidance. And Tim Ferriss wrote a big post about how his book sales have plummeted because people are using AI to get their answers for self-development related content. So I think if you want your book to actually sell and reach readers, it's not going to just be, and even today, it's not just putting it up on Amazon. It is
Yeah.
raising awareness. And it's
Yeah.
also, Janet, writing a recommendation worthy book. I'm really fascinated with this Theo of Golden
Oh,
story, this
yeah.
book, right? Self published novel. So, and he turned to his niece and said, I have no idea how to do this. Will you help me market my book? And she said, yeah, let's start by reaching out to everyone you know. And so they reached out and they said, hey, would you buy the book? Would you, tell friends about it? He sold 3,000 copies the first year. That's phenomenal for any self-published book. Year two, they kept going. They started pitching it to book clubs. They sold 25,000 copies. Year three, they broke 100,000 and the publisher said, whoa, what's happening here? Right. So then they get a deal. Then he's on Oprah, all the things. But part of what made that happen is the book is recommendation worthy. It's really a good read.
Yeah.
So step one, guess what? AI is not going to make a recommendation worthy book. It's not going to make a book that
It's
moves
not.
people, right? So write a great book, hire great editors. Mark Paul's Greatest Gambling Story is driven with Amazon ads, but he
Yeah.
hired great editors. It
Yeah.
reads like a novel. He did all the right things.
And
So
the cover.
we're and the cover's huge.
We didn't talk about covers today. The cover situation can just kill your book.
Absolutely. And the title.
Yes.
Titles are
Yes.
critical.
And subtitle. All of it.
And subtitle. All of it. Agree. It's a
Packaging
package.
matters. Yeah.
It's a package. And a lot of people who are self-publishing and they are the DIYers don't know, right? So a benefit
Right.
of hybrid is you're going to get some guidance on that stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? When an author says, "Oh, I had to create my cover in AI," I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. We hire professionals to do cover design. We don't use an AI tool or a Fiverr."
The other thing that I see is, especially with self-help books, my daughter's a beautiful artist and she did a beautiful piece of work for my cover. It's like, yes, that is a great lotus flower. That is not a book cover.
Always,
And
constantly.
those to me are the most painful conversations. It's similar to talking about vanity presses, where you can feel people flinching. Ouch. It's like, this is not a cover, not a real
Put it
cover.
inside the book.
There you
Right?
go. Hey, that's going to be or even on the back cover, that's going to be my tip for now on.
I like it.
So Stephanie, where should people go if they want to join the Nonfiction Authors Association?
Well, I'd love to see you over at nonfictionauthorsAssociation.com. And we do tons of courses. That is another big benefit. The reason people join, they love our courses, which Janet, you'll be teaching one for us soon. We're excited about that. So courses are a huge part of our community and membership. And I'm at these community calls, 36 a year, and we do lots of educational webinars and it goes
and the
on
conference every spring.
Conference every May, and it's 3 days. It's completely online, and we get people from around the globe. And we've had Cheryl Strayed and Anna Quinlan and phenomenal speakers there as well. And I'm just really proud of what we've built. I'm having the best time.
And again, I just want to say, like, I want to once again say that the quality of people that are coming from your organization really are up leveled. They really are. And I've participated in the Nonfiction Writers Conference. And one of the things as a service provider that I have really enjoyed is the, I forget what you call it, but it's like an Ask an Expert.
Ask a Pro sessions.
Ask a Pro session. Those sessions are so meaty. And what I love out of them is that people come prepared. People, like I said, they're more educated and more informed when they're coming from your community. And I really feel like as a service provider, I feel like I get something out of the conversation. And that's the greatest thing when it's like a two-way conversation, you know? And you're really,
yes,
really
and they're
learning.
15-minute free consultations that attendees can sign up and choose their people to consult with. And they're consistently just people who participate both on both sides, both the attendees and the pros. Love it, because it is an interesting conversation and there's so many interesting people and you learn what's on their minds and what they're struggling with. And I love those conversations as well.
So for those out there listening today, if they're going to do one thing, and for nonfiction authors, if they're going to do one thing this week because of this conversation, what should it be?
Don't give up on marketing. Just commit. And so I always like to use the garden analogy because I used to hate gardening. I like it now, but I used to hate gardening, but I've always loved having like a really pretty yard. And so the analogy is if I walked out of my yard every day and planted and watered 3 seeds, over time, it grows. And marketing works much the same way. You don't have to love it. You don't even have to like it. But if you plant and water 3 seeds every day, that adds up. That is how authors build momentum and achieve success. So plant and water your 3 seeds every day, 20 minutes a day, and it'll compound.
That's fantastic advice. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time today.
So fun talking with you, Janet. Thank
you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's our show. Find resources and more at zenandtheartofselfpublishing.com. I'm Janet, and I'll see you next time. Until then, take a deep breath, trust your work, and keep writing.